Hi friends, and welcome to the story of Robin Hood and Little John. In the heart of England, there was a huge leafy place called Sherwood Forest. It was full of tall trees, secret paths, and wiggly streams. And living in this wonderful wild wood were some very special friends. The most famous was Robin Hood.
He was ever so clever and brave, and the best archer in all the land. He wore green from his pointy hat to his pointy shoes.
Then there was Little John. Now here's a funny thing, Little John was not little at all.
He was a giant of a man, as tall as an oak tree and as strong as a bear, but with a heart as soft as a fluffy bunny.
He was Robin's bestest friend, and they were always ready for an adventure. But they weren't the only ones. There was also the wonderful Friar Tuck.
Friar Tuck was round and jolly, with a big, booming laugh that could scare the squirrels right up the trees. He loved a good song, a good story, and most of all, a good pudding.
Some people thought he was just a silly, gentle friar who only cared about his lunch. But they were quite wrong. Underneath his brown robe and his love for jam tarts, Friar Tuck had the heart of a lion. He was kind to every creature, big or small, and he was braver than anyone knew. He was a very important part of Robin Hood's gang of merry men. The three friends were like three peas in a pod, even though one was a speedy archer, one was a mighty giant, and one was a pudding-loving friar. They spent their days in the sunny glades of Sherwood, laughing and sharing stories.
Robin would practice his archery, sending arrows whizzing perfectly into the center of a distant tree trunk.
Little John would show his strength by lifting massive logs as if they were tiny twigs.
And Friar Tuck would often be found tending to his little garden of herbs and vegetables, humming a cheerful tune as he worked, making sure everyone had enough to eat.
Their home in the forest was a secret camp, hidden away where no one could find it. It was a cheerful, bustling place with a big campfire that was always crackling merrily. This was where they lived, safe from the grumpy Sheriff of Nottingham, who was a terribly greedy man and didn't like Robin Hood one bit. The sheriff wanted to chop down the beautiful forest and catch Robin. But Robin, Little John, and Friar Tuck protected the forest and all the good people who lived nearby. They were a team, and together they believed they could do anything in the whole wide world. One sunny afternoon, on the 12th of June, the friends were enjoying the warm weather. Robin was polishing his favorite bow, Little John was having a little nap against a tree trunk, and Friar Tuck was admiring a particularly perfect-looking strawberry he had just picked. The birds were singing their sweet songs and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. It was all so peaceful, but suddenly, a strange sound cut through the happy noises of the forest. It was a sad sound, a sound of someone crying. It wasn't a loud cry, but a small, desperate sob that floated towards them on the wind.
Did you hear that?
Robin Hood jumped to his feet instantly, his eyes scanning the deep green shadows between the trees.
It sounds like someone is in trouble, Robin.
Little John, who was now wide awake, stood up, his great height allowing him to see over the nearby bushes. Friar Tuck, holding his strawberry, looked worried. His kind face was creased with concern. He knew every sound of the forest, and this was not a happy one. It was the sound of a heart breaking, and that was something the good friar could simply not ignore. They followed the sound carefully, creeping through the ferns and ducking under low-hanging branches. Robin led the way, his feet making no noise on the soft, mossy ground. Little John followed, ready for any danger, and Friar Tuck came last, his round face peering nervously into the woods. The crying grew louder and louder until they came to a small clearing. There, huddled at the base of an old willow tree, was a small family. It was a woodcutter, his wife, and their two little children. They had nothing with them but the clothes on their backs, and they all looked very hungry and very, very sad. The woodcutter explained their terrible story. The nasty Sheriff of Nottingham had sent his soldiers to their little cottage. The sheriff had declared a new, horrid tax. He said the family had to pay him 10 gold coins just to live in their own home. Because they were poor and had no gold coins, the soldiers had kicked them out. They had taken their home, their tools, and even the children's only wooden toy. Now they had nowhere to go and nothing to eat. The little girl sniffled. "We're so hungry," and her words made Friar Tuck's kind heart ache with sorrow. He knew they had to do something right away. Robin Hood's face grew stern. He hated the sheriff's cruelty more than anything.
This is not right. No one should be treated this way.
I'll go to Nottingham and give that sheriff a talking to he won't forget.
But Friar Tuck stepped forward, shaking his head gently. He looked at the scared children and knew that fighting was not the answer this time. They needed a clever plan, a kind plan, a plan that only a friar who loved food could dream up.
Wait, my friends, barging into the castle will only lead to trouble. The sheriff has guards and high walls, but I know something about the sheriff's men. They are greedy, just like their master, and more than gold, they love puddings.
Robin and Little John looked at him, confused. Puddings? How could puddings help? Friar Tuck's eyes twinkled with a brilliant idea.
We will make the most delicious, most wonderful, most sleep-inducing puddings the world has ever seen. I have a special recipe with poppy seeds and calming herbs from my garden that makes anyone who eats it fall into a deep, long sleep.
So the team got to work. Friar Tuck was in charge, of course. He directed Robin and Little John to gather berries, honey, flour, and his special sleepy herbs. They worked together, a whirlwind of activity in their secret camp. Friar Tuck mixed and stirred the pudding batter in a giant wooden bowl, humming a happy tune. He was a master in the kitchen. Soon, the most wonderful smell filled the forest air, the smell of sweet baking puddings. He made dozens of them, little golden brown cakes filled with juicy berries and a secret sleepy magic. They looked absolutely scrumptious, good enough for a king, or in this case, a gang of greedy guards. Once the puddings had cooled, the second part of the plan began. Friar Tuck filled a large basket with the tempting treats.
I will go to the woodcutter's cottage. The guards will not suspect a humble friar. I will tell them I have brought them a gift to celebrate the sheriff's generosity.
Robin and Little John were worried, but they trusted their friend. They would hide nearby, ready to spring into action. Friar Tuck, with his basket of puddings and his heart full of courage, walked calmly towards the cottage, a friendly smile on his face, ready to face the sheriff's men all by himself. Friar Tuck arrived at the cottage and found two grumpy-looking guards standing outside. They looked bored and hungry.
Good day to you, sirs. I have brought you some delicious puddings to thank you for your hard work.
The guards' eyes lit up when they saw the basket. They snatched the puddings greedily and began to gobble them down without even saying thank you.
These are good.
Within minutes, the magic herbs did their work. Yawning widely, both guards slumped to the ground and fell fast asleep, snoring louder than a pair of grumpy badgers. With the guards snoozing soundly, Robin Hood and Little John crept out from their hiding place. Teamwork made everything easy. Little John gently picked up the sleeping guards, one under each arm, and carried them deep into the forest, where they would wake up confused and far from the cottage. Meanwhile, Robin and Friar Tuck hurried inside and gathered up all the woodcutter's belongings. They found his axe, his wife's weaving loom, and even the little wooden toy bird for the children. They packed everything onto a small cart they had brought with them, working quickly and quietly as a perfect team. They returned to the clearing where the family was waiting anxiously. When the children saw their home and their toy returned, their faces broke into wide, happy smiles. The woodcutter and his wife couldn't stop thanking the three heroes. "How can we ever repay you?" the woodcutter asked.
Seeing your family happy is all the reward we need.
Friar Tuck, his face glowing with kindness, gave the children a hug and 2 extra puddings he had saved, ones without the sleepy herbs, of course. He had shown everyone that courage isn't just about fighting, it's about kindness and using your special talents to help others. That evening, there was a grand celebration back at the Merry Men's camp. The woodcutter's family were the guests of honor. They all sat around the crackling campfire, sharing stories and singing songs. There was music and dancing, and Friar Tuck made sure there was a magnificent feast for everyone, with roast chicken and, naturally, a giant pudding for dessert. As the stars twinkled above Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood, Little John, and Friar Tuck looked at their happy friends. They had worked together, using their different strengths to make the world a little bit better. And they knew that as long as they had friendship and courage, no problem was too big to solve. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.